Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Imagine if we could crack the code of aging, actually figure out how to live longer and healthier. That's what we're diving into today.
Sounds pretty ambitious.
Well, we've got a fantastic guide. It's Live Forever Curious, a scientist's guide by John S. Tregoning.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
It's a blend of science and personal stories, so it's both insightful and super relatable. If you're intrigued, you can find a link to the book in the description.
Sounds like a good read.
Oh, and before we get lost in the science, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future deep dives.
Definitely. Those notifications are a lifesaver.
Okay, so back to the book. What really struck me was the author's voice. He's an immunologist, but he writes in such a down-to-earth way.
I agree, he's a scientist, but he doesn't shy away from sharing his own worries about getting older, which makes the science, more human.
Exactly. It's like having a brilliant friend explain all this complex stuff, but in a way that makes sense.
Totally.
Now, he starts with a question that seems basic, but actually it's anything but. What does it even mean to be dead?
Yeah, you'd think that would be straightforward.
You'd think so, but it turns out there are so many ways our bodies can stop working. The author goes into all the ICD codes, the International Classification of Diseases they use to categorize all the different ways we can die.
Wow, I never thought about death needing so many categories. It's mind-boggling.
It is, right? He then focuses on the two main ways we eventually stop functioning, either the heart stops or the brain stops. And from there, he delves into the big theories of aging.
Yeah, like why do we even age in the first place?
Exactly. He talks about programmed cellular aging.
Ah, so like our cells have a built-in expiration date.
Exactly. Like a countdown timer.
I see.
Then he contrasts that with the damage accumulation theory where our bodies, well, they kind of wear out over time from things like DNA damage.
So it's like the difference between a clock that stops ticking and a car that rusts away.
Perfect analogy. He actually uses a similar one in the book, and it makes you wonder, how much control do we really have over the process?
Right, like are we destined to age a certain way, or can we change our trajectory?
That's the big question, right? Now, another thing he dives into is inflammation.
Inflammation, isn't that just when you like sprain your ankle or something?
That's acute inflammation, but he's talking about chronic, low-grade inflammation that's happening all the time.
Oh, so like a slow burn.
Exactly. And he connects it to all those things we know aren't good for us. Smoking, overeating, drinking too much, constant stress.
Right, those everyday vices.
Yeah, and even long-term infections can contribute.
So it's like a constant fire simmering inside our
A
bodies.
very good way to put it. And it makes you realize that making healthy choices isn't just about avoiding disease. It's about controlling that inflammation, potentially slowing down how fast we age.
Right, like putting out the fire before it gets out of control.
Now, he also talks about this fascinating link between our gut microbiome, all those bacteria living in our digestive system, and inflammation.
The gut microbiome. What does that have to do with aging?
Well, it turns out it can actually influence our risk of things like heart attacks.
Wow, so even the tiny organisms in our gut can impact how long we live.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty mind-blowing stuff.
Oh, and he also explores the placebo and nocebo effects, the powers our minds to affect our bodies.
That's like the idea that if you believe something will make you better, it might actually work.
Exactly. And the flip side, if you believe something will make you worse, it might. He makes the case that our beliefs and expectations really matter when it comes to health.
Wow, that's powerful stuff.
It is. Now, another thing people are always curious about is genetic testing.
Right, like can our genes tell us how long we'll live?
The author actually got his own genes tested, and he emphasizes that it's not a crystal ball.
So genes aren't destiny.
Not entirely. He talks about how complex human genetics is and how our genes interact with our environment in ways we're still figuring out.
So it's nature and nurture working together.
Exactly. But he also dives into his own ancestry, tracing his family back generations.
Ah, like building a family tree.
Yep. And he found some interesting differences between the genetic genealogy and the traditional family stories.
So our genes can tell us more than just our health risks. They can unlock secrets about our past.
That's right. It's like solving a historical puzzle.
Fascinating.
Now, speaking of personal journeys, the author is a bit obsessed with his resting heart rate.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, a low resting heart rate is generally a good sign, right?
Yeah, it usually means your heart is in good shape.
But he noticed that his was slowly increasing over time.
So even for a healthy person, things change.
Exactly. It was a reminder that our bodies are in constant flux.
So did he, like, freak out and go see a doctor?
He's a scientist. Of course, he delved into the anatomy of the heart to understand what was going on.
Makes sense.
He walks us through the heart's 4 chambers. And how blood circulates, it's like an incredibly complex plumbing system.
And the heart's the pump keeping it all going.
Precisely. And then he gets into the things that can go wrong, like heart attacks.
Oh no, those are scary.
He talks about how adrenaline and cortisol Those stress hormones.
Yeah, the ones that get us through deadlines and traffic jams.
Exactly. Well, they actually play a role in regulating heart rate and blood pressure.
I never thought of stress hormones as having a positive role.
Right. It's all about balance, though. Too much stress can be a problem. And then there's atherosclerosis.
What's that exactly?
It's basically when plaque builds up in your arteries. It can restrict blood flow and lead to a heart attack.
Ooh, that sounds dangerous.
It is. And guess what? He connects those two things we keep talking about, fat and inflammation, to heart attacks as well.
They just keep popping up everywhere.
Right. But to end this section on a more positive note, he also highlights the incredible advancements in heart surgery and transplantation.
So even if things go wrong, there's hope.
There is. It's truly remarkable what medical science can do nowadays.
That's encouraging to hear.
It is, isn't it? Now let's move on to another essential organ, the lungs.
Okay, the lungs.
So the author decided to have a spirometry test, which measures lung function.
Wait, did he have a problem with his lungs?
Not really, but even he was surprised by what he test revealed. His lung function had declined, and this was for someone who's generally pretty healthy.
So our lungs can age too. I guess that makes sense.
Right, and this experience made him delve into how the lungs work and all their amazing defense mechanisms against pollutants. We take breathing for granted, but it's a pretty complex process.
Totally. I'm curious to hear what he discovered.
Well, we learn about cilia, those tiny hair-like structures in our airways.
Ah, I remember those from biology class.
And mucus, that sticky stuff we all hate.
Yeah, mucus gets a bad rap.
It does, but it actually plays a vital role in trapping harmful particles and protecting our lungs.
So they work together as a cleaning crew?
Exactly. It's a fascinating system. But even the best systems can break down. He talks about COPD, which stands for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
I've heard of COPD. It's pretty serious, right?
It is. It's linked to smoking and air pollution, and it basically destroys the airways, making it harder and harder to breathe.
Smoking and pollution, the usual suspects.
Right. It's a stark reminder of how important it is to protect our lungs. He really breaks down how harmful smoking is, focusing on nicotine, carbon monoxide, and tar.
That's a good reminder for anyone still lighting up.
It is. And from there, he naturally transitions into a discussion of cancer.
Cancer, that's a big topic.
It is, but he uses a personal experience with skin cancer, which was thankfully successfully treated, to launch into a broader exploration of the disease.
So he connects his own journey with the science.
He does. He explains how cancer develops, the role of genetic mutations, and all the factors that increase our risk. It's not just about our genes, it's about the choices we make and the environment we live in.
Makes sense.
He emphasizes the importance of early detection and dives into the range of treatments available, from surgery to things like immunotherapy and even therapeutic vaccines.
Wow, so there's a lot of hope on the horizon for treating cancer.
There is. It's amazing how much progress has been made.
That's reassuring.
It is. Now, shifting gears to the brain, arguably the most complex organ in our bodies.
Oh yes, the brain, the control center for everything.
He takes us on a whirlwind tour of brain anatomy, explaining the roles of neurons and glia, those essential cells that make up our nervous system.
It's mind-boggling to think how those tiny cells create our thoughts and memories.
I know, right? And he doesn't shy away from the big questions, like how does consciousness work? Or how are memories formed?
Those are the ultimate mysteries.
They are. He acknowledges that there's still so much we don't understand about the brain, but he guides us through what we do know.
I'm ready to be amazed.
Well, he also tackles a topic that many people fear: dementia.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
He explores the different types, the symptoms, the impact on individuals and their families. It's a sobering reminder of how precious our cognitive health is.
It really is.
He spends some time discussing Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common type of dementia.
Right, I've heard that's on the rise.
Unfortunately, it is. And he explores the possible roles of amyloid plaques, those sticky proteins that build up in the brain.
Ah, I've heard about those.
He also talks about inflammation and vascular damage as potential contributors.
So that's not just one thing that causes Alzheimer's, it's complex.
Exactly. There are many factors involved.
That makes sense, but it's also kind of frustrating, isn't it? Like, there's no easy answer.
True, but research is ongoing, and hopefully we'll find better ways to prevent and treat it in the future.
Fingers crossed.
Now, on that note, we'll take a break here and come back for part 2, where we'll explore even more fascinating insights from Live Forever Curious. Stay tuned.
Can't wait. All right, so picking up where we left off, the author takes us into the world of blood and circulation.
It's something we don't often think about, but it's essential for life, right?
Absolutely. He starts by breaking down the components of blood. You've got red blood cells, the oxygen carriers.
Yeah, those are the ones that give blood its color.
Exactly. Then there are white blood cells, our immune system's warriors, always on patrol.
Keeping us safe from invaders.
And let's not forget platelets, the tiny but mighty clotting agents.
Ah, yes, those are the first responders when we get a cut.
Precisely. They work together to stop bleeding and prevent infections. It's a pretty amazing system.
It really is. And he also delves into the history of blood transfusions,
He
right?
does. It's a fascinating, albeit a little gruesome, journey through the early attempts at transfusions, which were often quite dangerous.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But he traces the evolution of this life-saving procedure from those early, risky attempts to the modern methods we rely on today.
It's incredible how far we've come.
It is, and then he delves into the intricate process of blood clotting.
How does that work exactly? I mean, it seems simple, but I'm sure it's not.
It's a complex cascade of events. It involves clotting factors, like proteins, working together in a very specific sequence.
So it's like a chain reaction.
Precisely. It's like a well-choreographed dance of proteins ensuring that bleeding stops when it needs to.
But not too much plotting, right? Because that can be dangerous too.
Exactly. Too much plotting can lead to strokes or heart attacks. It's all about balance.
Makes sense. Now, he doesn't only talk about blood, right? What about the lymphatic system?
Oh, yes, that often gets overlooked. It's like the unsung hero of our circulatory system.
So what does it do? I vaguely remember it from school.
It's like a drainage system running alongside our blood vessels. It helps clear out excess fluid and waste from our tissues and plays a key role in immunity.
Ah, so it's like a garbage disposal system for our bodies.
That's one way to put it. And speaking of things that can go wrong, he talks about high blood pressure, which he calls a silent killer.
Yeah, that's a serious one. It can lead to all sorts of problems.
Exactly. It often doesn't have noticeable symptoms, but it can quietly damage your heart, blood vessels, and kidneys over time.
And how does blood pressure even work? It's one of those things people talk about, but I'm not sure I really understand it.
He explained how it's regulated by a complex interplay of hormones, like adrenaline and angiotensin. It's a delicate balancing act, and when it's disrupted, the consequences can be severe.
It makes you realize how important it is to get your blood pressure checked regularly.
Absolutely. And of course, he talks about treatments for high blood pressure, including medications like ACE inhibitors, which have a fascinating connection to snake venom.
Snake venom? Really? That's crazy.
It is. Sometimes the most unexpected things can lead to medical breakthroughs.
So from snake venom to life-saving medications, it's amazing how science works. Now, he also mentions cholesterol, right?
He does. Cholesterol is another substance that often gets a bad rap, but it's essential for our bodies.
Right, but there's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, right?
Exactly. He explains the difference between HDL, the good kind, and LDL, the bad kind, and emphasizes the importance of keeping those levels in check.
And how do we do that?
Well, he stresses the importance of lifestyle choices, diet and exercise, and points out that smoking and excessive drinking can tip the scales in the wrong direction.
So it's about making healthy choices, as usual. But then, for something completely different, he describes his own experiment with cold water swimming.
Cold water swimming, brr. Why would he do that?
Well, he's interested in the potential health benefits, but he also acknowledges the risks. He describes how our bodies react to cold water, that initial shock, and talks about the dangers of cold water shock and hypothermia.
Yeah, those are serious concerns. It's not something to take lightly.
He doesn't sugarcoat it. He even mentions the less glamorous aspects of swimming in open water, like potential exposure to pollutants.
Okay, maybe I'll stick to the pool, but it's refreshing to see an author who's honest about both the potential upsides and downsides.
I agree. He's not trying to sell us anything. He's just sharing his experiences and letting us draw our own conclusions.
Exactly. And from those icy waters, he takes us back inside the body to explore the respiratory system.
The lungs. Always fascinating.
He starts with the anatomy of our airways, describing the journey of air from our nose and mouth down to the tiny air sacs in our lungs where oxygen enters our bloodstream.
It's a journey we take thousands of times a day without even thinking about it.
Right. It's pretty remarkable. He talks about his own spirometry test results, which, remember, measure lung function, and discusses the factors that can influence those results.
Like age, smoking history, things like that.
Exactly. And he gets into the dangers of COPD again, emphasizing how it gradually destroys our airways. It's a sobering reminder of the importance of lung health.
And he reinforces those messages about the harmful effects of smoking and air pollution.
Right. Those are the two main culprits when it comes to lung damage. But then he talks about something I'd never heard of before, hypersensitivity pneumonitis.
What's that?
It's basically an allergic reaction in the lungs. You inhale something and it triggers an inflammatory response.
So it's like an overreaction of the immune system in the lungs.
Exactly. He gives some interesting examples like pigeon fancier's lung.
Pigeon fancier's lung.
Yeah, it's a real thing. People who raise pigeons can develop this condition from inhaling particles from the birds. There's also cheese worker's lung and even hot tub lung.
Wow, those are some strange names for lung conditions.
I know, right? It's amazing how something as simple as breathing can lead to such a variety of health issues.
It is. Now, let's talk about cancer again. He brings it up in the context of his own experience with skin cancer.
Yes, he uses his personal story as a springboard to discuss the broader topic of cancer.
Which, as we've already discussed, is incredibly complex.
Absolutely. He delves into how cancer develops, emphasizing the role of genetic mutations and the factors that can increase our risk.
Like smoking, sun exposure, diet.
Exactly. It's a combination of our genes and our environment.
He also stresses the importance of early detection and highlights the advancements in cancer treatment, from traditional surgery to immunotherapy and therapeutic vaccines.
It's incredible how far we've come in our understanding of cancer and how to treat it.
It really is. And then he drops this fascinating fact that some cancers are actually caused by viruses.
Viruses, really?
Yeah, he mentions HPV, which is linked to cervical cancer.
So sometimes cancer isn't even our own cells going rogue, it's something from the outside world invading us.
It's a reminder that our bodies are constantly interacting with our environment, and those interactions can sometimes have unintended consequences.
Very true.
Now, shifting gears once again, the author turns his attention to the brain, the most complex organ in the human body.
The brain. It's the seat of our consciousness, our memories, our emotions, everything that makes us human.
Exactly. He starts with the basics, explaining the roles of neurons and glia, the cells that make it our nervous system.
Right, those tiny cells that send signals and communicate with each other.
Exactly. He dives into the mysteries of consciousness and memory, acknowledging how much we still don't understand about how the brain really works.
I mean, those are questions philosophers have been pondering for centuries.
Exactly. And he doesn't pretend to have all the answers. He also talks about the challenges of studying the brain, considering how delicate it is and how well protected it is inside our skulls.
Yeah, it's not like we can just crack it open and have a look around.
Right. But despite those challenges, we've learned a lot about the brain, but there's still so much to discover.
Absolutely. And of course, he addresses the topic of dementia, which affects so many people as they age.
It's a heartbreaking condition, and he doesn't shy away from discussing the different types, the symptoms, and the impact it has on individuals and their families.
He explains how dementia gradually robs us of our cognitive abilities, our memories, our thinking skills, even our personalities. It's a stark reminder of how precious our brain health is.
It really is, and he spends some time discussing Alzheimer's disease specifically.
Right, that's the most common type of dementia, isn't it?
It is. He talks about the possible roles of amyloid plaques, inflammation, and vascular damage.
So it's likely a combination of factors, not just one single cause.
Exactly. And he also touches on the debate surrounding brain training and whether these mental exercises can actually help prevent or delay cognitive decline.
That's something I've always been curious about.
Me too. Now, from the brain, he takes us on a journey into a different realm, the fascinating world of our gut microbiome.
Ah, yes, the gut microbiome. That seems to be all the rage these days.
It is. He talks about his own experiment with altering his microbiome through diet.
So he's putting the science to the test himself. What did he find?
Well, he describes his experiences and emphasizes the challenges and limitations of microbiome research. There's still so much we don't know, and he cautions against overhyping the findings in this field, which is still rapidly evolving.
It's good to have a dose of skepticism, especially when it comes to new and exciting areas of research.
Absolutely. He's not dismissing the importance of the microbiome. He's just urging us to be cautious and wait for more conclusive evidence before jumping on any bandwagons.
Makes sense.
But he does discuss some interesting connections between our gut microbiome and various aspects of our health, like our immune system and even our mental well-being.
So it's not just about digestion, it's about our overall health.
Exactly. And with that, we've journeyed through another fascinating layer of the human body. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the author's concluding thoughts on living a longer, healthier life.
All right, as we wrap up our deep dive, the author shifts his focus to a couple of things we've all heard a lot about: diet and exercise.
Yeah, those are hot topics. Always lots of opinions flying around about the best way to eat and work out.
Right, and the author tackles these topics with a healthy dose of skepticism. He's not promoting any fads or quick fixes.
Good, because those rarely work in the long run.
Exactly. He starts by looking at the role of diet in maintaining a healthy weight and preventing diabetes, which, as you know, is a huge problem worldwide.
Yeah, millions of people are affected by diabetes.
He explains how our bodies regulate blood sugar, focusing on insulin and glucagon, those hormones that keep everything in balance.
Insulin's the one that helps our cells use glucose for energy, right?
Exactly. And glucagon raises blood sugar levels when they dip too low.
So it's a delicate dance between those two hormones.
Right. And he discusses the dangers of both high and low blood sugar levels, emphasizing the importance of staying within a healthy range.
Makes sense. And what about the different types of diabetes?
He explains the difference between type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune condition where the body attacks its own insulin-producing cells.
Ah, so it's not something you can prevent through lifestyle changes.
Right, and then there's type 2 diabetes, which is often linked to obesity and inactivity.
So that's the one where lifestyle choices really matter.
Exactly. And he highlights the link between obesity and type 2 diabetes, explaining how excess weight can mess with our body's ability to regulate blood sugar effectively.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is, and he's realistic about the challenges of losing weight and keeping it off.
Yeah, it's not easy in today's world.
He emphasizes the importance of sustainable lifestyle changes, like focusing on a balanced diet and getting regular exercise.
So no crash diets or crazy workout routines.
Nope. He even delves into fasting, describing his own experience with a fasting mimicking diet.
Fasting, that's interesting. What's that all about?
Well, it's basically a way to trick your body into thinking it's fasting, even though you're still consuming some calories.
Ah, I see. And what did he find?
He acknowledges that research on fasting is ongoing and that there's still a lot to learn. But he presents both the potential benefits, like cellular repair and improved insulin sensitivity,
Sounds promising.
but he also talks about the risks, like nutrient deficiencies and potential side effects.
So it's not for everyone.
Exactly. It's important to do your research and consult with a healthcare professional before trying any type of fasting regimen.
Makes sense. Now, moving on from diet and exercise, he turns his attention to the kidneys, those essential filtering organs.
Right. They work tirelessly to remove waste products from our blood and maintain a healthy balance of fluids and electrolytes.
They're the unsung heroes of the body.
Absolutely. And of course, he discusses what happens when they don't work properly.
Kidney failure, that's a serious condition.
It is. And he talks about the common causes like diabetes, heart disease, and high blood pressure.
So those same culprits keep popping up again and again.
It's all connected. And he also touches on the impact of alcohol on the liver, our body's main detox center.
Yeah, excessive drinking can really take a toll on the liver.
He reminds us that too much alcohol can lead to fatty liver disease and even cirrhosis, which is scarring of the liver.
So moderation is key when it comes to alcohol.
Definitely. Now, in the final chapters, he shifts from specific organs to broader reflections on aging and the inevitable decline of our bodies.
The big picture stuff.
He approaches it with honesty and even a touch of humor.
Good, because it's a topic that could be a bit heavy.
He talks about how our cells gradually lose their ability to repair and replace themselves, which leads to those telltale signs of aging.
Like wrinkles and gray hair.
Exactly. He focuses on collagen, that protein that gives our skin its elasticity.
So as we age, we produce less collagen.
Right, which leads to wrinkles and sagging skin.
The joys of getting older.
He also talks about osteoporosis, which is the weakening of our bones.
That's why older people are more prone to fractures, right?
Right. And he discusses the gradual loss of muscle mass and strength that often comes with age.
It's a lot to process, but it's important to understand what's happening.
I agree. And he even delves into the hormonal shifts that occur as we age, like menopause in women and the decline in testosterone in men.
Those are natural parts of aging, but they can be challenging to deal with.
He talks about ways we can slow down the aging process, emphasizing a healthy lifestyle that includes diet, exercise, stress management, and meaningful social connections.
So it's about aging gracefully and maintaining our health and vitality for as long as possible.
Exactly. He even touches on some emerging anti-aging therapies like senolytics, which are drugs that target and eliminate senescent cells.
Senescent cells, what are those?
They're basically zombie cells that contribute to aging.
Wow, that sounds like something out of science fiction.
It kind of is, but this is a real area of research with a lot of potential, though it's still in its early stages.
So there might be ways to actually fight aging at the cellular level in the future.
That's the hope. Now, in his concluding thoughts, he circles back to the importance of social connections and the dangers of loneliness.
Our relationships really do matter, don't they?
They do. He emphasizes the profound impact they have on both our physical and mental well-being.
It's not just about living longer, it's about living well.
Exactly, and he draws on the famous Harvard study of adult development, which has followed hundreds of people for decades.
I've heard of that study. It's yielded some fascinating insights.
It has, and one of the key findings is that people with strong social networks tend to live longer, healthier lives.
So our friends and family are good for our health.
Absolutely. And he introduces this concept of a health
A
pension.
health pension. What's that?
He suggests that investing in our health early in life, through healthy habits and strong relationships, is like putting money in the bank for our future well-being.
That's a great analogy.
Right, so he's not saying we need to find some magic pill or fountain of youth. It's about making choices that support our health and well-being throughout our lives.
That's a message I can get behind.
Me too. And ultimately, he leaves us with this thought-provoking question. What is the point of living longer if we don't prioritize happiness and connection?
That's a powerful question. It really makes you think about what's truly important in life.
It does. And on that note, we come to the end of our deep dive into Live Forever Curious. It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope you've all enjoyed it.
Me too. And as always, we want to hear from you, our listeners. What were some of your favorite moments from the book? What resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to stay curious with us. Thanks for joining us.